Do you want this one?
Yeah, fair. Yeah, you got it.
Pass it around.
Yeah. This mic is not working. Yay for troubleshooting. More cooties on it. Hello, and welcome to our kind of socially distant but very COVID safe September GGDA meeting. Yay! And we actually do have a nice socially distanced crowd here at Kennesaw State University. Definitely appreciate the College of Software and Game Design. We'll call it College of Software and Game Design. Software engineering is good too, but we like the game design part of it. Been a good home base for us for a number of years, and we'll make a few announcements, and then we'll get into an excellent panel we have on how to finish and publish your video game. I know that's of strong interest to folks here, as well as to all of you watching online. Thank you for joining us online. Thanks also to our Patreons, Jennifer, Ron Jones the artist, Puzzles by Joe, Stephen Coffey, and I know I am forgetting several of you, and I apologize. I should have that list printed up tattooed on my arm so I can read it off before each one of these. But thanks all of you very much. We'll start with one piece of bad news I didn't realize hadn't gotten a lot of publicity. DreamHack has announced it is postponing its 2021 event into 2022. But remember, we've got a lot of Siege events coming up this year. The Siege College Fair is going to be on ground in person October 14th at the KSU Conference Center. And we are, in fact, looking for volunteers for this event. Volunteers, if you're not already a GGDA member, you'll get a GGDA membership. If you are a GGDA member, you'll get free access to Siege events and other giveaways that we have ahead for you, because we will be doing some more Siege events after that. Oh, and that is from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. October 14th. So if you're available, Paul can sign you up, or I can sign you up, or if Daniel Kandrski shows up, we'll get him to sign you up. All of us will sign you up 3 times. You can volunteer 3 times as often, get 3 GGDA memberships. Then on November 5th to 6th, we will have an online Siege like we did last year. If you remember last year, we had Will Wright as our keynote speaker and a lot of good game dev presentations from folks all over the country. We expect to do the same, but as usual, our focus will be on game developers in Georgia, and we'll have a lot of good presentations by them. And we had an incredible game showcase of this little game called Pushamo last year on the Siege online conference. So we're looking to do more of those video game showcases. If any of you have video games you'd like to showcase at Siege, let us know. You can still apply to speak there, and keep an eye out for it. It will be on our YouTube channel, Georgia Game Devs. And if you're watching this online on Twitch, check out our YouTube channel, because we have over 400 free videos on all aspects of game dev there. And that's true for all of you here live. More than 400 videos on all aspects of game dev, all free for you on YouTube, coming out of these various sessions over the years. And on November 7th, we hope to have an in-person event. And that's where, if you're a Siege College Fair volunteer, you'll get in free. And more information on that will be forthcoming. And on December 3rd, we'll be doing a hybrid investment conference. We'll be doing our digital media investment conference for the past 8 years. A few people here have been in attendance in the past. Not just game studios apply there, but digital media companies of all types. And if you are interested, go to siegecon.net, siegecon.net, and you will find information on how to apply for the college fair and for the investment conference. So we're glad to be able to do things in person and online, and keeping this going here. Let's see. I believe that is the major announcements we had. Hi, I'm Andrew Greenberg. I am the executive director of the Georgia Game Developers Association. I've been a game designer here in Georgia since 1990, making my living as a game developer here. A lot of different titles up online. If you go to GOG.com, you can check out my Emperor of the Fading Suns and Machiavelli the Prince game, and we hope we'll soon have some more up there. And now it's my pleasure to let our panel introduce themselves. Do you want to hand it around, or do you want it on the tripod? Sorry, we're trying to figure out still how to do this most safely. Pardon? All right.
Hello everyone, my name is Anatoly Lubarski. I am a software developer for 20 years, and last decade I'm an independent game developer, and my company name is X2Line, and I created games like Baby Adopter, Little Girl Magic, Orange Tree, Cafe Formula, Scout Legend, mostly published on mobile as free games, and also on HTML5 platforms, on Facebook and other social networks. And altogether, on each platform there are millions of downloads of my primary games, and I also have paid games, like same games like paid games that they have like thousands of downloads, and that's it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brook. My pronouns are she, her, and by day, I work with Blue Mammoth working on Brawlhalla, and then in my free time, I work on cool little games like Pushamo, which is like a fresh take on Tetris, and that particularly is in the Georgia-made games bundle, which is available on itch for $10, so check that one out.
I'm Kevin Dressel. I am independent game developer by night and XR developer by day, I guess. And I've got 2 games on console, Polyroll and Clash Force. Both like retro games, Sonic-like. And yeah, both of those are also in the bundle, so check out the bundle on itch, the Georgia Indies bundle.
Hi guys, my name is Sean Fieser. I am a recent alumni from Kennesaw State University right here. I have 2 games released on Google Play, Road to Salvation and Danger Will Robotson. Make sure you look them up. And I'm also working on currently publishing Vertical Shift, which is a game I'm working on for a while now and very excited about. You should definitely look that one up.
All right, this mic is now working, and I might be coming in louder than the 4 of you. So you will not see me on stage. We're trying to maintain some social distance. And since I've been to Dragon Con, I might be carrying something, but I know I'm not. We already did the test, so I'll be safe down here outside of the line of fire. But I will be acting as moderator tonight. If you have questions, please share them in chat. We'll also be taking questions from the crowd here. And let's see if I can do this without... Look, people, humans. So weird to see. All right. But we say that the last 10% of game dev takes 90% of the work. Anyone have a theory what that is? What happens at that last 10%? What goes on that makes finishing the game such a near impossibility?
Everything that you didn't account for, and then some more. It's like, yeah, the first 90% is all the stuff that you're more excited to want to go do, and that's kind of like designing your mechanics, that's designing your levels, that's building all your features. It can even include your play testing, your balancing, and then once you get into the remaining 10%, that's when you start talking about, where you're actually going to release your game. You need to make sure all your settings are in there. You need to make sure that you support all the different platforms. You need to make sure that you've done your optimization so that you can actually be available on different devices, especially low-end ones. It's pretty much just all of the stuff that you normally put off to the very end ends up taking a lot longer than you expect it to.
I'll maybe pull back and talk about a little bit before that. I don't know when that last 10% kicks in. That's probably part of the problem, actually. Like, for me, one of the biggest things that gets me is kind of running into design issues in the metagame, or just like that last little bit of polish to get a system feeling really good can be really hard. Yeah, and I think the thing that I've found helps with that is basing your game on established designs. Like, innovating is good, but it helps to be able to go back to another game and look and see how they solved a problem. I think that helps with that.
Yeah, so it's all going to be about polish and making your game the best it can be, cuz you can implement everything pretty fast usually with a game jam in 48 hours. You can be impressed how much you can just cram in there, but it's going to be kind of a mess for all sorts of reasons. So you need to put in a lot of time to make everything look and feel the best it can, and then do testing on it because you're going to miss things and see how you can make it even better than that. And all that takes a lot of time.
Um, I I think I agree with all the previous speakers, and I think you need also to take into account uh, things like how do you name your game? What's the name of the game? Like you need to check online if it's not taken, if it's not trademarked. For example, you can name your game something with friends, because with friends is like trademarked by Zynga. So and I've seen many people like release their game and it's called something with friends, and then they get feedback that it's like they cannot use it, and they like have to rename it, and it's much harder to rename the game after it's released. And also you need to, before the release, you need to like prepare your Facebook page for the game, create website, Twitter account, maybe think about how do you like push your game, create an email list for maybe influencers or for your friends that you can send your game to, and things like that. And also in regards to QA, some people advise to like send the game to people who can rip up your games, like posting it into toxic communities, so they can like point out every little thing. And one developer advised me to post on Congregate, like it is known as like toxic community, so they like rip off your game, and but you can improve based on that feedback, and release it on like a more normal platform to get more users, and it will cover more more bugs or more design issues that it might have. Also, in terms of QA, you need to I focus on like general audience for my games, so you need to take into account like test the game on the cheapest Android phone. Like you can buy it, for example, on Amazon and eBay for $50, something like Samsung Galaxy Grand Prime or something like that. That is like the most cheapest phone, but your game will look uglier there, and you have to make sure that it's playable at least. And also another thing, you need to think about your KPIs and how you're going to measure your KPIs. And also you need like initial number of users, like several thousands of users, to be able to measure your KPIs. And you need like to prepare analytics solution so you can do it. You need to define your KPIs. There are some universal KPIs like D1 retention, D7 retention, and you need like to define additional KPIs for like your game. And the last thing, you need to test extensively the initial scenario. Like new user comes to the game, downloads the game, and doing its first play. Like because many developers like they focus on like advanced levels and so on, and but they forget about the like the first impression that users have. And this is like should be the main focus of QA. Like download, start the game. There should be as less the least obstacles between the user and when he starts to play. No intermediate screens and so on. The user needs to get straight into the game. It's like the main focus, and it will help with retention, with engagement, and so on.
Yeah, those are all great points. We talk about in game design that first minute and really that first 10 seconds of the player experience really decides if they're going to stick around more than anything. We all focus on great end games, but when you are done, you need to go back to the beginning. And yes, most of us designers have a lot of old crappy phones lying around. I don't have a dozen old phones in my office just because I'm a hoarder. They have some actual utility. All right, but you've all touched on an important point. How do you plan for all the craziness that can happen in the end? Because, I mean, things explode on you in the end. The game grows to sizes you never imagined. How can you actually plan for that sort of chaos that can happen in those final month or months?
There's a question in the back, too. Are we holding until the end, or?
Yeah, if you want to come on down and ask your question.
Of course, no, I just derailed that question.
We'll come back.
Sorry.
We plan for being derailed.
Hi, do you know what it... Hi, my name is Malcolm. I just have one question. What does it take to create a game like Genshin Impact? Like, the scope, like...
Can you?
Hey, Brooke, you're the one working on a studio of that size. It's
you
a
could
lot
tell me
of
what
planning
Genshin
and a number of
is.
years and a few $1 million. Yeah. Yeah, talk with us after. We'll have a networking period after this, so we can chat more about it. Yeah, back to the question on planning, because that addresses this in a significant way. How do you plan to get this stuff done?
The first part is really just researching it, because the reason, it gets called 10% when it's really 90% is because it kind of gets put off as like, just add analytics, just optimize your game, just polish it, just balance it. And so a lot of it is kind of knowing what it actually takes to do all that stuff, so that way you can kind of scope and schedule it accordingly. The key thing is also just, especially when you're starting out, to really try to limit the scope of your core project, so that way the first 90% is the easy part, and it gives you a lot more opportunity to really focus on that second 90% or the 10% and be able to kind of give it the attention and time that it deserves. And you also get it's a lot easier to do when you're working with a smaller project starting out.
I'll jump off from that. What I have found, so I told you two of the games I published, right? Polyroll and Clash Force. There's another one I've been working on for 6 years called Zap Blastum. So what happened with that one is I can best put it as I think we made the wrong game first. That was a very large scope project that had a lot of design innovations, like coming off of what I said last time. Almost everything we had to figure out by play testing and experimentation. We weren't just making a platformer the way we were with Clash Force and Polyroll. So we actually, made a decision to sort of set Zap down for a little while and focus on these smaller games that were like a better opportunity to learn the process of finishing a game. And we finished those. We finished Clash Force and Polyroll, and I think it was successful, and now we have games out, and Zap Blastum is still in development. It's still happening. But now we're smarter. Now we know more, and it's easier for me to see why Zap is so hard in comparison. And so I guess what I'm saying is it's not bad to realize you bit off a lot with a project and try a different project. You don't have to give up on something. You can just put it down for a little bit. And so I guess, yeah. Going back to the question, for me, I think it's about picking the right project. That helped me a lot when I realized that was an option. Okay.
So, scoping your game is very important, like both of them said. And I would like to add on that not only do you have to be smart enough to scope it well at the start, you have to be able to put your foot down to make sure you don't grow that scope throughout any of the development process. Maybe you already have characters and like dialogue. What if I just make it so that the dialogue is dynamic and responds to the world? But before you know it, you'll be trying to recreate Genshin Impact, which you can't really realistically do if you're on a small budget, a small team, or any of that. So you have to be willing to commit hard to what your scope is and kind of how far you're willing to go, which shouldn't be very far at all. And the other thing that can help with that is picking a game that you can enjoy developing and playing yourself. I've tried a couple games before, which I thought the core idea was really cool. Oh, it's like a twist on golf, but it's hard to control. But the issue is if you don't enjoy playing that, it feels like kind of harder and harder to make and test it each time. And you come up to problems and you just kind of lose the motivation to solve them because you can't find the fun yourself. So you have to be able to have fun with your own game.
I want to add like a couple of cents to the above. I think there are many things that are important, but some things are not important before the release. For example, you don't, in my opinion, you don't need to like put a lot of effort in creating a game icon or logo or like design the background this way or another way, or put a lot of effort into the like UX issues. For example, if you want to put menu on the left or you want to put menu on the top, because most chances you will need to like change that after the release, because you will see how people play, what is easier, what is not easier. For example, if you create a great icon for the game that like catches the audience and many people click on it and download the game, but then they see that the game is one level below the icon quality, so they like leave the game right away, and like platforms like Google and Apple, they monitor this behavior, and when they see that many users like leave the game immediately after they download, it like drops in ranking. So when you check your KPIs and monitor it and see how people are playing, and you like start from that point, you start to improve your KPIs, you can schedule your like UX work or icon work, graphics work into after the release phase of the game.
Do people know KPI, key performance indicators?
Yeah, like key performance indicators. It's like there are universal. For example, like on mobile games, it's free games. It's retention, day 1 retention, day 7 retention. It's like universal for all games. Usually people use, and also you can define KPIs for your game. Like you want people to like go fast through 7 first levels, and if you see that it's very hard to go through first 7 levels, and you maybe have 1,000 levels, it's something wrong with your design. You need like to make first levels easier, and you need to monitor that.
You want to talk about KPIs more?
I was gonna say one quick thing on Steam. Like you could say that you want 10,000 wish lists before you launch. That's an indicator of performance on your game. That's kind of a connection to the PC world anyway. Maybe that is more relatable.
Let's actually dig into metrics a little bit more, because this is an area that is actually relatively new with the old PC box games I used to launch. The only metrics we really cared about was that number of sales and the average revenue per sales. That final royalty check was the main metric we cared about, and the 5-star reviews and things like that. But now there's so many things that people track, and it is, you want to plan for that early on, but often you'll figure out as you're developing the game what you really need to be tracking. And I think, Kevin, you mentioned metrics coming in late in the process. And that sadly is true even now with a lot of games. Metrics aren't an afterthought, but they come in much later in the process than they should. But these days, that is a key part of both finishing and publishing your game. And Brook, I know that the big title you're working on, I saw them putting in the metrics early on and all the things they were tracking then and how that exploded into a far larger collection of data that they had to track to be competitive. Why don't you talk a little bit more, not just about what a game designer wants to track and why, but how to plan for this and to incorporate it as you're finishing. One of the great ones was just wish list as a KPI, figuring out what the real interest is. Anyone else? Anyone want to jump on this one?
I can talk a little bit about CCUs, because if you're making a multiplayer game, you need to pay a lot of attention to your current consecutive users. That's how many people are logged in at once, because those are the people who are playing with each other. And depending on the multiplayer game, if you have a very low CCU, then your game is more or less dead in the water. And so one of the scary things is actually that you need to make sure that you have a good CCU from literally day one. It's not really like a single player game where you can kind of launch it and then start building your player base. You need to make sure that you're actually doing a lot of preemptive work to kind of course, build up hype for your game, but be monitoring your metrics, whether it's through community outreach or whether it's through a beta, or doing something to make sure that on your launch day you have the CCU that you need so that your game can even launch, so that you can even have a successful day one release.
I'm trying to think if there's anything on console that makes sense to talk about. One thing that I feel like I want to bring up is this kind of goes all the way back to the beginning of your project. Like, making a game that is gonna sell well is something I try not to think about because I think I'm an artist, but you kind of have to at least think about it a little. Like who you're making the game for. Because Steam's really competitive now, and actually Switch is really competitive too. It's really opened up a lot. So it's kind of like looking at tags on Steam and like you might, we're talking about the last 10%, I mean, you might realize you need to add a feature to your game to make it more marketable to the particular audience that is most likely to buy your game on Steam. You know, like, or on Xbox, there's Clash Force did really well because we had achievements in there. There's people who really love achievements on Xbox. So it's like looking into that stuff, understanding what little pluses you can put in that are going to help you. And I feel like that's a twist on the question, but I don't know, it's kind of related.
Well, if that was a twist, my engine of choice is Pico 8. Don't worry if you haven't heard of it. But basically, it doesn't have very many features, and it doesn't have any good way to collect any analytics. So I'm coming at this from kind of a more qualitative standpoint, where most of my analytics and feedback are coming from playtesting sessions, which I had to really plan out a whole bunch to make the most out of it. And I tried to have like a hard focus on different sessions and get my own metrics that were important to me rather than what I could or couldn't collect through the actual in-game data. So there are other ways to come at it, but it's a lot trickier. And since it's not automatic, you're not going to get nearly as much numbers as easily. It's not very scalable, but it's still important to get that kind of feedback from people.
Yes, in terms of KPIs, like for mobile games, for free games, there are some numbers that you need to check. For example, D1 retention, that means that people come back to the game after they play the game first time, and if they come back the next day. It's like universal, and it mostly works for all games, and it's a good indication if of the game like quality or in terms of playing. And usually if you have on mobile platforms best games like top 10, they have around 40% 30-40% day first retention. That means that the leading games, and it is a very good number. If your game has like 30 plus, it is very good. 20 plus, it's also okay. If you like you launch a game and you see like 5-8% day first retention, it means something is wrong, and you need like to maybe make a big redesign in the game. Also, you need to understand your target audience and take into account some restrictions that come with that. For example, if your game on Android, it is like designed for families program, and all games that have that may have appeal to children, for example, they have children characters and so on. Even though you like target a more mature audience, from the Google's perspective, these games should be in the Design for Families program, and the rules are more restrictive. Like you cannot use any third-party SDKs and so on. And there are many privacy rules, and the reviews for updates take they can take a week to review an update, while regular games it takes like a few hours for like automatic review to release an update. From one hand, it seems like it is more restrictive, but from the other hand, these games are high quality, and then the number of these games is much lower than the general games, and many people like look for this game, for Design for Families games that they can play with the family. And from one hand, you like have you might think that your nerd audience is lower than the general audience, but on the other hand, you get a competitive advantage because it's like a curated curated number of games within the whole number of Google's games, and so you need to think through your target audience and
All right, so we've definitely gone onto the publishing side now. So it seems like a lot of the crossover between finishing your game or a lot of polish has to do with where you're planning to publish it, be it the Games for Families program through Google, be it going whether you're on Steam, whether you're on Android or wherever, or going multi-platform right off the bat. Let's step a little bit back and talk about the pre-publishing phase, even before you're up on early access. What do you want to have in place with your game before you start talking about it on Steam, before you start grabbing that Steam page, etc.? And then what do you want to do when you start promoting it for the first time?
Market research and a minimum viable product. So you definitely want to know kind of everything you can about the people that you're marketing towards. And there's a lot of cool tools online that names are escaping me right now, where you can kind of look up, basically you search the kind of keywords that you would expect to find your game, and you can see how many people are searching these kinds of things, and you can see what other things these people are searching, and you can kind of use all of that data to kind of make sure that your Steam page is like built for search engine optimization, making sure that you kind of have subject lines and phrasing that will kind of grab people's attention, making sure that you're not being too wordy or stuff that makes people kind of want to click off. And then the second thing is just again, your minimum viable product, making sure that you have a very core focus on making sure that your game has just the minimum that it needs to be able to start showing it off and be able to start putting it in front of people, before you start getting too bogged down by trying to add all the flair and the fun stuff that you're actually excited for.
Something I'm thinking about is like your Steam page is really got to grab people in the first like 5 seconds or something. Like figuring out kind of what your pitch is really important, and it has game design implications. Like what your focus is going to be. Like that short description on Steam, I mean, it's like 2 sentences. Sometimes it's 1 sentence. Which means your game has to be understandable in that short a piece of text, which means your pitch has to be really, really tight. And the same thing in the trailer, it's basically the same. You have like 5 seconds that people are looking at your trailer before they click away or scroll away or close the tab. So it's like you have to communicate in those 5 seconds. I feel like it's not even 5, honestly. Yeah, it might be half a second. But you have to communicate so quick what your game's about. What is the soul of your game? Why is it exciting? And why is it going to connect with people? So, like figuring that out is so important. And also, we may be talking about pitching to publishers later, but that's so important for that too. Yeah.
Those are both great points, and it's really hard to add to that a whole lot, but it all falls under kind of trying to generate hype for your game. And you want your page to be up as early as it can, so you can direct people to it and start getting those wish lists. So if you like start going on Twitter or Facebook or different sites trying to talk about your game and show off what you have and like show off drifts you have, that can be great. But if you don't have anywhere to direct them yet, and they don't have like a good way to find your game after that, they'll probably just forget about it. So I just want to amplify the importance of getting it ready as early as you can.
You also need to, I don't know about Steam, but on Apple and Google Play, you need to localize your game and also like the page, the store page.
Tell them what localize means.
To translate into languages, for example, the main languages. In addition to English, you need to like Spanish, French, Portuguese, the main languages like, and you need to localize. And as Kevin said, you need like on the first sentence, you need like, I think you need like to have a full description, like whatever you think to describe your game. But on the first 2 sentences, like you need to describe the whole game. because usually most people, they like read first two sentences and skip the rest. And also on Google and on Apple, it's like you see like first three rows, and then it's like show more, and most people don't click show more. So you see like first three rows, it's like what defines your game. And also you need to have good screenshots and good short video. Screenshots is very important.
All right, so you get the game ready for Steam. You get your Steam page ready. You get it up on Apple for review ahead of time. You submit it to any of the online portals. We'll deal with publishers last, because that's a whole separate set of fun. And you're getting ready to pull the trigger. You're going to make the game actually live. It's going up on itch. It's going everywhere. Looking back at your experiences, what are the things you wish you had known before you had pulled that trigger? What do you wish you had done differently in the past? In the past. Go, Kevin.
Pass it.
I think you're the expert in this.
We'll go in order.
I think kind of comes back to what I was saying before. The key thing, I wish I knew before publishing a game is to do a lot of that market research and a lot of that understanding your audience and how many people actually know about your game before you launch it. It's kind of the key thing is once the game is out, you don't really get that chance to kind of have that day one spike, that kind of big hype moment. And so it's really just... And it depends from game to game, because there's definitely times where it makes sense to launch and then focus on trying to get your game out there. But especially if you have a multiplayer game, you need to make sure that you know exactly who your audience is before your game has come out.
And because we're just starting out, most of us, the initial release spike of users that Steam gives to your page, or any console too, that initial release spike, you're never going to get that again. And that is the best way to get users. So yeah, like Clash Force, we priced it just a tiny bit too high for the amount of content we had. And I think that, honestly, we might have sold twice as many copies on the first day or something. And then some of the reviews were like, oh, it's like $4 good, but not $5 good. So, like, we... $4.99, right? Yeah, exactly. Psychology. So we added a whole nother level to the game, like another 4 levels, a new world and tile set, and then all of those, it's too expensive reviews went away. Everybody seemed more satisfied with it after that, but it's too late. It was basically too late. We still did well, but it was like, I wish that we had thought about that a little more first. What's the common knowledge about that? Like, for every hour of playtime, it's... I forget. There's some conversion. I forget who came up with this. But somebody came up with a formula for like what Steam users are expecting in terms of playtime for a price. Yeah. What else? It's easier to get on console than you think it is. I think that's another thing, because what we're finding is that you make more money on console because it's not as saturated in games as Steam is. So don't think like, oh, I'll never be able to do that, or it's out of reach. Like Xbox, there's a form online you fill out where you pitch your game. And Switch, like, you can actually just sign up for a Nintendo developer account, and then there's a button to apply for Switch. And PlayStation's got a form too. It's a lot of work, but you actually can do this. It's not really locked off. But The other thing I wish I had known is that you kind of do make more money from publishers sometimes. It's sort of a balancing act, probably, finding a good deal, finding a good publisher. But some of them won't make you change your game. They're not going to ruin your game always. Some of them want to work with you. Like we've worked with some good people, I think, that I think originally I was like, oh, I have to self-publish, or or I wanted to self-publish to keep creative control, but it's all kind of within reach, I think, and we didn't really realize that at first when we were just thinking about Steam.
So what I wish I had learned before my first game, and even my 10th game, is your first game, your first 10 games maybe, are all going to be bad. They're all going to fail. So get them out of the way as fast as you can, learn from them, gain experience for them, and then throw them away. Don't look back. Game jams in particular are really great for this, for getting a lot of a breadth of experience really fast, and for kind of like building your own sense of game design, what kind of games you do and do like to work on, and what parts you like to work on. I went and tried to publish a VR game for my second or third game, and nobody's ever heard of it, except for people who went to Siege in 1 year. And then I didn't go for publishing another game until 1.5 years later with Golf NATO, a wacky physics golf game that also never finished the ground because I couldn't get excited about it. And that was after I even had like 10 game jams after my belt by that point. After a bunch more experience with that, I kind of had a better sense of what I wanted to go for and what I could realistically accomplish. And only then did I manage to bring a full game to completion that I'm really happy of in every regard, just because I could more accurately gauge what I could do, and I was able to have more fun doing it.
Now on mobile, like when you release your game, you don't even have like a spike for like new releases on, and if it's published there, it's like very brief because the number of games on mobile, and you don't get any users maybe on the first release, organically. So you need to plan, and like once you could get like significant number of users on the release, but now I think it's almost impossible, and you can get some luck, but it's only you like can rely on that, and usually you need to plan ahead. So how do you maybe make a small advertising campaign to get initial number of users, and then get feedback and can get measurements, and get people to review your game and get initial feedback. For example, if you get 50 or 100 reviews that people write, you can also on Google and on Apple you can reply to reviews, and you can maybe address the issues that they find, and release an update, and you can like reply to each one of them that it is addressed, and this can help your game going forward. Once it has some traction, initial number of reviews, or initial number of users, it can get users on its own, because the game starts to rank higher, and otherwise it will get 0 users.
So I want to diverge a little bit back to something that Brooke said, which is
very true in one sense. Make a lot of games, get them out there, and don't sweat them too badly if they don't do the numbers you want. You got something good out of them to begin with. But none of you have completely thrown away any of your games. 3 of you have already used your games to build communities that follow you, and one of you is in the process of doing that. And I'm firmly of the belief these days that the most successful games are the ones that best deliver a community, make the players become part of a community. A, do you feel that to be true? And B, how do you bring that community with you when you publish a new title?
Absolutely. So, for those who can't guess from things I've been implying, Vertical Shift is a multiplayer game, and so 100% about that. 100% of that is about having a community. Without a community, your game only has one person, and that's you, and that is contradictory to being multiplayer. And that's truthfully, at the end of the day, one of the fun things about multiplayer games is that your game is only really as good as your community. And so I'm not going to. It's very hard to build a multiplayer game, but the hardest part is building that community and making sure that you are creating a platform for kind of like a healthy place to play and have fun. And that's got to be the key focus, because no matter how cool a multiplayer game is, if you're not paying attention to your community, then you don't have a game.
I'm an introvert. Even online, I don't really do Discord very well. I try, but I don't really do it very well. Kind of what we're trying to do is just make enough games that kind of reach the same people, that if people go to our Steam publisher page, they're going to see like all of our games. And if they click on us on like, Xbox or Nintendo, they'll see like our list of games. I mean, honestly, we're relying on that mostly. We have Twitter. We do that too, but I also don't get Twitter. So, yeah, this is the thing I'm worst at, probably. It's important. You should do it.
Unfortunately, I am in a similar boat. One thing I have realized, so I develop and publish my games by myself. So one thing I realized is, since I'm a solo developer, I can kind of use my face to my advantage. Because I used to have a little company I started, Neurodiversion, which I published my games under, but there are a few issues I had with it, which is, one, it makes it harder because you have to kind of try and manage your own personal accounts plus your company accounts, which kind of ends up being twice as much work. But also, when you're like a small or solo developer, having a face and like being more relatable than just a company logo makes it more engaging for people and kind of works as your personality to bring it in. It's more of it makes it sound like you are more down to earth than a kind of company just trying to get out their product. And then you don't have to worry about sounding corporate or like a company. You can put as much of your personality into your brand, into your promotion as you can, and that does become your brand, and it is a lot more earnest because of that.
I have a Facebook page for my game, which have 500,000 followers, and it helps. Although on Facebook, when you publish on the Facebook page, not on all followers see it, maybe 10% can see the post and the others don't. But still, if like 20,000 people see the post, you like need to take it to your advantage. And I try to post regularly there. And also, if you already have a known game that has audience, it usually helps when your next game is like a sequel or a similar game, or the same, like you publish a series of games, like you have game 1, game 2, game 3, and so on, and of the same name. It helps also when you publish the game, because your previous game has audience, people discover it. It is easier to it helps with discoverability of your game. And also people usually ask what are my next plans when if they are addicted to your game, and they usually want like, if you have like another game coming, they want to try it. And it helps if you like publish and make announcements and so on. It's also it's also useful to maintain maybe an email list of like most important players who play like regularly for years, and if they have feedback, if they send you email, you can like save their contacts, and later when you and also everyone who like makes official feedback through, for example, you can create Google groups for feedback for the game, or user voice page for feedback, when users can give suggestions or submit bugs and so on. And when and you can maintain the list of people. And when you are ready with your new game, you can like send email to these people, and it will help with the release a lot.
And having that community is essential for the last thing we're going to get into, because we're getting to our hour mark, taking it to a publisher. So this was certainly where I had my success. Mall Tycoon was the first video game out of Georgia to sell 1 million units, and I could not have done that on my own. We had Take-Two as the publisher, and that was a key part of the reason that game sold so many. But publishing is a much different thing now than when I was putting boxes in Electronic Boutique and software, etc. So let's talk about it. How do you go ahead and take your game to a publisher? Should you? What do you get from them?
So full disclosure, I've never taken my game to a publisher. But we have, so Vertical Shift is also a virtual reality game, so we have talked with Oculus. We aren't interested in Oculus publishing our game. Naturally, they will ultimately be our publishers, because we're going to be on the Oculus store, and a lot like Steam, if you read those deals, they are technically your publisher if you go up on that store. However, really most of the benefits of a publisher is the marketing and the funding that they can provide, and making sure that you have the tools for success almost down to a science. But that's with them taking a nice cut out of your paycheck. So I will defer to the person who knows a lot more about that part.
Okay. I think, well, I can jump off what we were talking about a minute ago about community, because that's one of the things they're looking at. They're looking for buzz. So that's actually, that buzz you're building is actually investing in your publishability, I would say. Like they're actually looking at concrete things on Steam, like how many followers you have. And like Twitter, they look at Twitter too. I mean, they're looking for key performance indicators that they've seen successes over and over, and they know what to look for. They're also looking for your game to be basically done. So that's one thing. Is I kind of probably took Zap Blastum to publishers too early, like when the art was all prototypey and things were kind of buggy. I was doing demos for publishers, and I think the overall vibe was maybe in 3 years or something, which was important feedback. I needed to hear that. I learned a lot from doing that. Like when is the game at that 10% level? I kind of learned that from doing that. Like, I thought I was closer to releasing than I was. I was always like, oh yeah, I'll release next year. But the game was actually barely finished. As far as like the cut that they take, I mean, it's hard to judge that. I feel like it's really, yeah, I don't know. I basically think that it's a good idea to do it because they know so much more about what's going to sell than I did, at least. And I learned a lot from working with them, and probably am more prepared to self-publish now than I was before. So I think that it paid for itself. In both cases, they also either provided funding or dev work that really, really helped. So I feel like it justified it personally, but I think that is kind of a personal decision too. Can't think of anything else to say here.
So one of the things, just going for a publisher and just looking for one is definitely a business decision, not really a development one. So when you're going that route, make sure you know what you're looking for. If you're in a big group, make sure that if they give you funds and you're looking to use that to make it full time, make sure it's enough for you and the whole team or everyone who's going to be working on it to live off of it. You don't want to be halfway through your game and then realize your funds run out and then be stuck in a position where something has to happen that not everyone is going to like. And you want to make sure you read the fine print, make sure, have a lawyer look it over, because you don't want to be blindsided by something. Either if you assumed they were acting in good faith, maybe they weren't, or just something that you overlooked or didn't even know that could be a concern. Because there can be a lot to go right from publishing and getting more visibility and making more money, but there's probably just as much that can go wrong too, and you need to know how to look out for that.
I didn't work with publishers, but in the past some platforms contacted me to publish my game on their platform. For example, there are some HTML5 portals that host games, web-embedded games, like Crazy Games, Game Distribution, Pocky, and so on. And I published my game on Crazy Games, and like they monitor their competitors. So once I published the game on Crazy Games, it did well there. It was like on their first page. I was contacted by like their competitor Game Distribution to publish the game there, and they worked with me like to prepare my game to fit well their platform. They made QA for me, and like many rounds of QA. They like didn't like this and didn't like that, and sometimes it's an annoying process, but overall it's like makes the game better. And once I like implement most of the things they wanted, I like implemented it back on my Crazy Games version, so it also became better. So it helps. And in the past, I was also contacted by like a few years ago by a social network in Argentina, and they wanted me to publish their game there. And they worked with me, like they translated the game into Spanish. They asked me to rename the characters by like to have Spanish, like the names that are popular in Argentina. and so on. And I published there, and it's like after a year they closed like their platform, but while it lasted, it got me good revenue, and it was like ranked very well there. And when you are contacted by like a platform and they are willing to work with you like through the process to like get your game ready, is very helpful. Also, I'd like to mention that like when you release games on mobile, on Apple or on Google, mostly it's on Apple is more important. You can send the email to the marketing team to ask to get your game featured on Apple, and sometimes like it didn't happen for my games, but I heard some developers got their game featured, so it appears in like in a section of the App Store like featured for a limited period of time that your game is featured, and it can get many users this way. I didn't get it on Apple, but a few times I got it on Microsoft in the past when Microsoft had phones. Like now they don't have phones with Microsoft operating system, but a few years ago when they had phones, my game was featured a few times, and it like easily gained a lot of users because on Microsoft it also the competition is weaker, and like it was mostly ignored by major game titles, so it helped a lot.
Yes, and it's true. Once you've done a number of games, you will be. It's not uncommon to be contacted by the publishers, and I've worked with folks here in town who've paid for their game by selling the international rights and kept the U.S. rights when the game was done, and they could command more money from publishers that way. All right, we're definitely past our hour. If folks do have questions, you're welcome down here. We can ask them. But I did want our panelists to share any last thoughts, any last words of wisdom they have on what to do once you have your game up there online and people are starting to play it. Anything you should keep an eye out for, anything you should definitely be doing or not doing at this point.
Let's go the other way this time.
Like I don't have a lot to add, but you need just to focus to be able to see on your first release, be able to get like a few thousand, it's like for free games, right? On mobile. You need to focus on analytics to see if it gets like good numbers, and you need to get the initial like few thousand users to be able to do that. So you need to think about that. It's like the main hard thing to do, like to have this balance, like to release and to have a few thousand users to check their KPIs, key performance indicators, retention, and to check how you can improve on that. Also, I don't know if it was mentioned, you need to, on this type of games, you need to implement social features to improve on these indicators. For example, you need to be able to, from the game, to share it. It's like something universal, to share it on social networks, for example, and to maybe take a screenshot of the game, and also you can think about something else. For example, some social features. For example, users might like to do something, give them awards within the game. For example, if they pass some hard level, give them more points. Also give awards just for playing day after day. For example, if a user comes the next day and the next day, you can just give them a award, give them points, and show visual effect that you give that the user received the award. I think it helps a lot for users like to stick to the game, because everyone likes to get awards, even if it's like virtual.
So what you do after your game is published kind of depends on how much your stake in this is. I didn't mention this last time, but I just wanted to quickly add is that one of the options you could seek with publishing is something like that's really low stake, where you just make it and get a lump sum and can give it to other people, like flash portals for games, and you can just make it off of that. And if you do that, then the game's just out there, you've got your money. You don't necessarily have to do anything more than that. If you're going the more traditional route, then my answer is you would want to do some community engagement. You don't want to wait until this point to do that. You need to start building a community way before your game is in development, or while it's in development. But when you release it, it's going to be the first time it's in most people's hands. So you want to be keen on checking to see what people are saying, responding to people's complaints, and implementing feedback if you can or need to, and staying on top of things like that.
Yeah, implementing feedback is kind of what I was going to say. Like I mentioned the price thing with Clash Force. I mean, we added that new world pretty quick. I think it was within 3 weeks of launch that we added that new content. And Polyroll, we got complaints about difficulty on some of the bosses, and we fixed that in like a week. So that was important, and I think also showed that we're like paying attention. And Steam, it's actually really important to have stuff in that announcements section on Steam. It makes you look active, and also it's gonna blast to all your followers, your Steam followers, I mean. And that's a really good email list, because you know, they click on it and there's a buy button right there. So it's good to look active. Yeah, I guess we also didn't kill ourselves, like sleep, I guess, because releasing a game is going to be crazy. So we did not, we did it in 3 weeks, not 3 days. I think that was very important. So we didn't rush anything out. And then, yeah, sort of leveraging it to figure out what's next. We kind of pulled back and said, okay, well, we have a lot of users in some of these countries. Maybe we should localize it. And a lot of those conversations came from just sitting back and being like, we did it, and kind of having a now what conversation while we were calm.
I think I've come up with 2 things to say, actually. The first one is that if you're planning on launching your game, you need to understand that you are running a business, and you're going to need to do some math. The most notable one is how much did you spend to make this game, and how much do you need to earn to make a profit? And then, how many people do you need to sell to make that much money? Do that many people know your game exists? You can check your trailers. How many views do they have? How many likes do they have? How many times are they shared? Use those kinds of numbers to let you know exactly how much money you're going to be making before you start, trying to run this business. And since I don't think most people are going to follow that advice, my second piece of advice is to know that, just the more launches you do, the easier it gets, no matter how small your game is. And if you're really serious about trying to get into game development, you need to know that you're going to be doing this for a really long time, and that this is a marathon, not a sprint. But it is a marathon made up of a bunch of tiny sprints if you follow Agile.
One more thing is, especially if you're on a kind of web platform like itch, make sure you can keep an eye out for bundles that you can participate in. Most of my sales have been through bundles than individual purchases. Also, the Georgia Made Games bundle, $10 for about 10 awesome local games.
And we just shared that in the chat. So click on that link and buy it now. All right. Well, thank you to our panel. Appreciate y'all coming out here. Anatoly, Burgh, Kevin Dressel, Sean. And thanks to all of you for coming out and joining us tonight. If you're here live, we'll do another 45 minutes of networking. So make sure you meet somebody new. If you're online, do whatever you can to meet somebody new and safely. All right, take care, everyone. We have pizza here. Enjoy it. Thanks to everyone for coming out. Check out the Indies Bundle. Check out SiegeCon.net. Talk to us about volunteering for Siege. And good night.
Are we still doing questions?
Yep. If you want to do questions, come on up.
Absolutely. You
All right.
can totally just come talk to us.
If you're more comfortable just talking to him, yep. Talk to him.
You guys mentioned a lot of platforms, and it sounds like
You're going to have to come closer.
you mentioned a lot of platforms that you've released games on. Which one, in your opinion, most?
Oh, these are actually good questions. Hold on. We'll keep this going a little longer.
Out of all of the platforms that you guys have released on, both, what is your personal favorite? Like, which one do you feel you either have the easiest time or you've seen the best results with personally, and then which one would you say has garnered the most success for whatever you're trying to release?
You want to
If
talk
that-
to the mic? Or
Yeah, talk to the mic. We'll keep capturing this info.
it depends. If you're making a VR game, you're going to have a lot of good success on Oculus because it's a very new platform. And that's really the key thing is you want to make sure your platform is designed for the game you're making. And you need to, and if you can, you want to look for those really new and those really niche platforms because that's going to be where there's the least amount of competition. So even though Steam has the most players in total, you're going to have a lot of competition there. And so while you still will have, good sales, assuming you're marketing properly, you're just naturally going to end up doing better on those smaller niche platforms where there's less competition.
I don't know either. As far as easiest to release on, itch is probably the easiest, but Steam is really easy to be honest. If you can get past that $100 initial fee, and because of that, I've been kind of using it as a testing ground. Like it's better. Well, I don't know if it's better. It's easier to release on Steam, get some play testing from it, get some reviews, find out what the problems are, and release on console after. I think there's some value in releasing in multiple places at the same time too. And like I said, console, we've gotten more sales. But it's just really hard to release on a bunch of places at once. It's kind of easier to focus, I've found. Because it's hard enough to make a game and not deal with all that extra boilerplate of.
You can stagger your releases too. That's
Mm-hmm.
But,
Not don't release like on all platforms. Release
Okay.
on one, check.
Since you're talking already.
Yeah, so sorry.
And I'll go after.
Yeah, I think it's a good point by Kevin that you need to release like on one platform, you check and then release. While you address all these issues, you release on other platforms. I personally, I focus like on mobile platforms, so I think iOS is my first option. I release there because it has more audience from United States, Europe, and it's like easier to test. It's like less devices. Like you test iPad, iPhone, it's generally less number of and the simulator on Apple is also good, fast, so you can generally with simulator you test all devices, and then you like release on Android. And also Apple, it's like now it is easy to release not like with the same distributable you can release also on Mac. So you release on iPhone, iPad, and on Mac, and check there, and then you can release on like Android. This is how I now release.
So I want to speed this along just because we have a big line. But so my panelist said that it's kind of a question of knowing your audience, but it's also kind of a question of picking your battles. Steam has like a lot of games on it and like kind of a large user base, but unless you're really big, they're not going to do much to promote you at all. Itch is really easy to get on, but it also suffers from some kind of discoverability issues, but the people on it are generally going to be like nicer and more understanding to any kinds of issues, or more excited about the kinds of games that you make if they find it. If you want to do other platforms like Cool Math Games, then or any Flash platform, it's just kind of like a one and done thing, and I forget what I was gonna say.
Please don't feel obligated to stay on stage. You're already get drinks and whatever.
I'm good.
You've already done an hour up there, right?
I'm just glad there's so many questions.
Hello, yeah. So my question.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, introduce. Hi, I'm Mateo. So my question was. It's kind of a amalgamation, I guess. But with your multiplayer game, you already have kind of a platform to go off of, right? Like before, like you've already made and published a game. Like, how'd you acquire your audience so that you could get the players?
So,
right?
yeah, I got to preface with, unless you're making a VR game, most of my advice is not going to be very helpful. It's like I was saying before. So, no, I mean, I've published 2 games, but those were on Google Play. Those were mobile games. And there's no follow-through from those games to now. Most of the way we've been building our community now has just largely been from the fact that VR is so new and so niche that people are looking for us. And so you have a lot of advantage by kind of being on that frontier, because, you know, you are where people are looking. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I was just it's kind of a multiplayer game question, right?
Okay.
Like, is it wise to do a multiplayer game if you know it's so reliant on there being players in the first place?
No.
Like, that's the real, like...
We started to make a multiplayer game because we honestly fooled ourselves into thinking it was going to be easier to make a single player than making a single player game. The idea being that, you know, you can make a couple levels, people can play multiple times, as opposed to a single player game. You just plow right through all your content. No, it's absolutely harder to make a multiplayer game, especially when you're starting out, and I do not recommend it. And I think the only reason that it's worked out even remotely for us is because of the fact that we're VR and we are kind of on that frontier where we really have that advantage.
Yeah, that was kind of specified, but I was just wondering about.
You're working on a very successful multiplayer.
Yeah, actually, you would have a lot better things to
Probably can't say anything.
I haven't been around long enough.
Okay.
Oh,
You have a
alright.
multiplayer game. Kind of. No, online. I'm sorry.
I appreciate it.
Alright, so my name is Rylan Combs. I was wondering, how do you build like your online presence so that you can get an audience in the first place? Because I'm currently like I have a YouTube channel and I'm trying to like grow that up so that if I ever, you know, when I begin to publish games, I actually have a foot to stand on. Do you have any advice for that?
I would like to know the same thing.
I'm gonna apologize in advance. Really, a lot of any kind of attention I have is purely just from being in VR. I really wish I had some secret tools for success, but that is, you know, if you want to catch attention, be on the frontier. Because if you're doing kind of what everyone else is doing, you're gonna get kind of lost in the crowd. But if you stand out, that's gonna be how you get noticed. So that's the best advice I can give, is just try to be where the niche is, try to be where the frontier is.
I'm just going to jump in with that. There's multiple frontiers. Yes. Technology is one frontier, design's another frontier. I've been thinking about this a lot, like how id got started and stuff. They were chasing a frontier. I think it works. Yeah.
What is it? Id. Oh, okay, yes.
Because back there was a time where first-person shooters were the frontier, and PC games.
Their 2.5 shooter, Wolfenstein, 3D shooter.
Good evening. My name is John Merwin. I have a two-part question. The first is, do you guys feel like the recent, meaning the last couple of years, aversion to pre-ordering games, especially from larger studios, has begun to propagate into the indie scene, particularly with things like early access and betas and those kinds of things? And if so, you know, what would you guys do to try to minimize that? And then the second part to that question is, if you guys do think that early access and open betas and those kinds of release plans are still viable, how do you prioritize making and delivering content that is pushing your game forward while still also trying to focus on your MVP and just making sure you have a good solid foundation game that when you do go to press the release button, that it's going to be recepted well instead of just being a lot of fluff and extra content that was made just for kind of the release hype, as it were.
No, and I haven't done early access. I have not done early access, no. But what I've heard is that people expect the game to be done, and you're just sort of releasing content.
Right. That's kind of my question is how do you guys kind of try to mitigate that problem?
I have decided to not do early access as my solution. But
well, I'm not selling my early access game. We have a free beta, which it definitely skews things a lot. But the best thing I could say is to really focus on that MVP. If people are expecting the game to be done, try to make it feel as done as possible. And that's really just making sure that MVP is de-scoped as much as possible so that you can polish things pretty thoroughly without getting too bogged down by it. And also having a good artist can make a game look a lot more done than it is. Anyone else?
I haven't done any early access publishing either, but just I feel like you'd want to definitely compartmentalize what you can to make sure you can work on and put out things timely enough to show that you're still active. If people see that, oh, you haven't updated in like 2 months, people are going to be less interested in purchasing your game if it's still in early access. If you put out small things like a new level or this one new feature at a time, then people will see that you're constantly adding updates and will be more interested. Do you have anything? Yes.
It's not about Steam, but like on mobile platforms, for free games, you need just to maintain the game, to release updates regularly, and like to add more content and fix bugs to improve the game all the time. So you like release, and then you release like maybe 200 iterations after that, trying to improve. And this way people see, like while playing, that the game is improving all the time. So it gives them the incentive to continue to play because they can discover more content. And you can also announce on a Facebook page or about your new game and give post pieces of content from the game to get them curious and to expect the game. And you can announce that we are releasing a new game this year, and then you can say post every month, in the next 3 months we release a new game, and post some graphics from the game. People get curious, they they start to wait for the game, and then you keep announcing until you release, and that keeps the game keeps the users interested in it.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Just last week, we released a video called Surviving and Winning Early Access. I put the link in our chats. Definitely check it out on YouTube/Georgia Game Devs.
Hey guys, my name's Seth. So I mainly wanted to ask, because one thing that I've been curious about, because I wanted to be an indie developer for a while, is when do you start the marketing process? When do you know when to start showing off your game, but not too late where you don't have enough users or you're too close to the end of development, but not too early where you have nothing to show for?
Are you an artist?
I try. I'm in the catch everything right now, so I'm trying.
If you think you're a good artist, then I would say it's almost never too soon to start marketing your game, because you can make cool graphics, you can make kind of a cool teaser, just something that looks pretty, that gives off the appeal. And this isn't necessarily the thing that gets people wish listing, but just so that you can kind of track what attention it's getting. If you're not an artist, then it's really, I would say, about how soon you can get that minimum viable product out. That's about, like, pretty much once you can get a demo ready, something that you can kind of put in front of people and kind of say, hey, do you like my game? That's going to be, once you have successful testing with your minimum viable product, that's really when you should start trying to market.
Yeah, I think I would say that the most important thing is to have something that makes you stand out from hobby projects. I feel like the cutoff is once you have something that looks professional, that looks like you're, yeah, that's probably, yeah, I don't need to clarify that. That probably makes sense.
As early as you possibly can.
Thank you, guys.
Hi, my name is Joel. I had a question. I have two questions. One of them is, how's the marketplace on Switch compared to mobile games? Because I know some people like call Switch or like a glorified tablet or something like that. So I wanted to know if there was any overlap between the two.
I think it's easier to get noticed on Switch. The general trick is to put your game on sale a lot. That still seems to work kind of, but it doesn't work as well as it used to. On mobile, I mean, I don't actually know the trick because I got scared away from mobile. I was like, I think I'm going to make more money on console, so I refocused. As far as overlap in audience, I don't really know, to be honest. But
Ultimately, I'm going to pass the mic to him because he's going to have a lot more to say on it. But it really does depend on what your game is, too, because there's games that will work really well on mobile that won't work on Switch, and then there's games that will work really well on Switch that won't work on mobile. And so this really applies when there is that kind of crossover, in which case that's kind of when you should really be doing your own market research and seeing like where your genre, where your mechanics, just kind of where that market is.
I just want to say also, one of the reasons I used to work at Zynga, like, shocking mic drop. The thing I noticed is that as indies, we just don't have the resources to compete with those people. Like, yeah.
Forgot the question.
How do you build your online presence?
Yeah, I don't have on console, but for mobile, it's very hard now because it's like there are millions of developers. They release many games. It is very hard to make people play, to like find your audience, to make people notice your game, because it doesn't have upon release it doesn't have any traffic organically, so you need to like figure out how you release. And if you previously have games and audience and online presence like Facebook, Twitter, you can take advantage on that, and also you can spend some money on advertising upon release. And also, if you like don't have a lot of followers on Facebook, for example, if you have a Facebook page, you can advertise a Facebook page for your target audience, and it's a lot cheaper to gain followers for Facebook page instead of send people to App Store and make them download your game. Maybe first you need to spend money to gain followers online for your page or Twitter, and then it will be easier like to post there and to maintain the audience there, and from that point you can like announce your game and so on.
And the other question I had was, how do you build a community on, let's say, a platform like the Switch where it doesn't really have achievements, and let's say you're building like a single player game that you can't really play, multiplayer wise or online?
It seems to be the publisher page that like you can look and see what games have been released by somebody. I think it's that, but I don't know for sure. This is buzzing I've heard from publishers and stuff.
Yeah, I have one game on Switch, and it's definitely the publisher who's getting the interest there. And, I mean, we have an existing fan base, an existing community, but it's definitely the publisher who's the strength for that.
Yeah, it seems like there's a cross-promotion thing going on. Yeah.
Thank you all very much.
All right. Thanks to everybody. And for the second time tonight, take care, everybody. Thanks for joining us.